Going live. Now, is that your cat making that sound? Is it
No,
really?
it's my dog.
That's your
It's my
poodle
dog.
making that
Yeah,
sound?
he's at the foot of my he's at my foot, and he's chewing on his toy, a stuffed animal.
Okay, all right. Because I'm a
So
dog lover, I'm a
yeah,
lucky. Hey, we're on Facebook Live now. Apparently, hey, welcome. I'm Emil Guillermo. It's good to see y'all. For that, that's a special shout out to the Texas FANHS chapter. I'm joined uh, with Alex Idillor. Sorry, all this double L folk,
Edillor.
and
Yep.
we have to stick together. And I know we said we're going to kick this out at 11:45, and in fact, we are going to kick it out. Well, we're not. We're kicking it out now. We're kicking it out now. But the thing is, I thought, usually we get out the technical glitches. Now, this is sort of our green room, and also this is the what do they call this? The Louisiana Filipinos who jumped the Spanish galleons and were the Manila men, in Louisiana. They would have called this the lanyap, right? The something extra. This is the something extra at the beginning. So we're just getting our bearings straight. This is the Filipino American National Historical Society Museum uh, virtual pop up, and I invited someone very close to. Oh, I got to fix my hair there. Someone very close to Larry Itliong, and that would be okay. Put my say parting the hair on Zoom. That's a hard thing too.
That's
Oh,
another title you can add to your
resume.
resume.
Yeah, right.
Hairstylist.
Hairstylist on Zoom. Can you imagine when we were locked down to have a Zoom haircut? It would have been very hard.
No.
Mirroring. Am I anyway, so look, this is the green room prep, and so this is what we're doing. Alex is calling in from Delano. I'm here in the San Joaquin Valley as well, and the museum is closed. But we'll get into the discussion about Larry Itliong and Larry Itliong weekend at 11:45. But this is now the chismis portion of the show.
Dismiss.
Yeah. So wait, Alex, you're telling me about Larry. Was Larry a foodie? Larry Itliong, was he into food?
Yeah, you know what? He was. He always had something for us because I told you when we were young adults, my
Uh,
partner in crime, my other Pangolo brother,
uh,
Roger Gadiano, we would bring a six pack of beer and go to Larry's house. This is after he left UFW, obviously,
yeah.
and we just chatted. He told me he would tell us stories. I wish I had a recorder back
Oh,
then to tell these stories. I wish I had memory of it
oh, you have
when he would
memory,
tell
Al.
me.
That's the whole thing. The whole thing about
Uh,
these stories is that we're telling these stories. But
right?
when all right, so you call them your Pangalo, right? That's your gang, right?
Yes.
Your
We were so we had one foot in American culture, one foot in Filipino culture. We were both Filipino immigrants. He came in '52. I came in '59, and so in our young adult life, um, we would we would select one night, usually Tuesday night. It was our cultural night, and we would go and play in the card rooms in Chinatown in Delano.
mm,
We'd play poker with the Manongs,
yeah.
and it was it was an eye opener for me. I really was kind of protected from that area where there were women who walked the streets. There were gambling halls. There were drunks out in the streets. There was there was a famously a Chinese restaurant and a Mexican restaurant next door to each other. And the Mexican restaurant, of course, served menudo till 4 o'clock in the morning.
Ooh,
And so we would go there for a cultural night, and it was just a blast. We playing cards with the mountains. They looked at us as like ignorant ignorant Pinoys. You know, we were just not into the cards. We were very bad at cards. In fact, true story. We
yeah,
were playing poker, right?
yeah.
And I folded my hand because I thought I don't have anything. So my mom to the right, he goes, I think he card counted or something. He goes, no, you should have a good hand. He pops open my cards, and
Yeah.
I have the wheel, which is the best hand in low ball.
Oh yeah, like
Ace, two,
straight. It's a
three,
straight.
four, five. It was
Yeah.
a straight with ace as the low card. And
Yeah.
he, man, he was so embarrassed for me. Like, yeah, I
What
could
are you
hear
doing
his,
throwing away the winner? Hey.
I could hear in his mind go, what kind of a Philippine are you?
Well, see, these are now. When did Manong Larry? We say that with all
Yes,
due respect.
all due respect.
Yeah. What did he was? Did you see him in the card rooms?
I never saw him in the card rooms, but at that time he was a prominent citizen.
Ah.
So he wouldn't be caught with the hoi polloi playing cards, spitting in an empty coffee can. None of that stuff in a small field bar. I don't think he would have been caught in that. Plus, he had family, so
Yeah. But that was the old Larry
that he probably, yeah,
with the
yeah.
hoi
The old
polloi.
Larry would have been. He'd be right in there with the boys,
Yeah.
causing havoc and stuff. So yeah, a lot of the stories that he would tell us was included adventures in Alaska as a young boy, in Seattle, and it was just always inspirational for Roger and me because we were the Pangolo brothers, and we were like, dude, there were Pangolo brothers before us.
My mother used to always
uh,
say, "Oh, Pangolo, yo Pangolo." She would always
uh,
say that. It wasn't like a term of endearment, though. It was more.
no, it wasn't.
Yeah, it was more
It
like,
wasn't.
"You Pangolo, what's on you
But
matigas ulo."
and both Roger's mom and my mom knew what we were up to,
Yeah.
but we knew that we were close friends. But then there was always like, "Oh, Roger called again." Like it's like they were leery about us being together because we would cause havoc.
Yeah.
And but then the bottom line was that what, they're good, they're bosom buddies and stuff. What
Yeah.
could go wrong?
See, this is growing up Filipino,
Yep.
wherever you are. I grew up in San Francisco. My father came in 1928, but I wasn't born until the 50s. You came as an immigrant in the 50s, so we have a
Yep.
kind of a mirror, kind of
Yep.
parallel existence. But
Hmm.
then I stayed in the city, and you went to Delano, and your father was in the fields, and your experience is really the experience that if my father had gone to the fields, it would have been the experience I would have had.
Hmm.
And so really, Alex, you are a treasure trove.
Yeah.
And just like we can tell stories about our Pungalo days, right? Yeah, here at
Right.
the museum, and those stories are important. Those stories are
Oh
important.
yeah, they help
But
they help mold us, right?
yeah,
They help mold us.
but for Filipino Americans and for the greater community that's interested in our history, I invited you here today because our stories about Larry Itliong are important and should be shared. And so thank you for coming on our Filipino American Historical Society Museum pop-up. We are here on the FANHS Museum, that's FANHS Museum Facebook page. We do this live. Thank you for being here, Alex.
My pleasure.
Yeah, you are.
You know what? This is kind of like my third act in my life.
Yeah,
I as a child, as a career guy with a family. Now, in my third act, I just want to just remember that generation. Uh, they're called the greatest generation by American journalists. That there was a book about them. But you know what? Our Filipino fathers and mothers were part of that same generation, the
yeah,
same instinct, the same instinct for survival, instinct for rising up from whatever existence you came from, and being a part of this fabric of America. We're as American as anybody
yeah,
right now. You and me.
yeah.
we
This
we
is
started from different places, but we're smack dab in the middle of America, and we love America, you know. Uh, but our true treasure is that we also have a second country that we can adhere to. You know, how precious is that? That you have two countries.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, this is our heritage and our legacy goes beyond the United States, even though
Mhm.
we say Filipino American, and yes, it happens in America, but really, truth be told, our legacy goes beyond. It goes back to our ancestral home, and the
Yes.
ancestral home is the home of our mothers and fathers, the homes of our grandfathers and grandmothers. And in the case of, an American national from the Philippines who comes here as an American national in the 20s, like my dad. Hey, my dad was my father and grandfather all rolled up into one, right?
That's true.
And so here we are, we're sharing these stories. And the story of today is really the story of Larry Itliong. And his story, I'm sure, reverberates with well, every Filipino American. If you're a Filipino American, you can relate to this story because it is the seminal Filipino story of the Filipino who comes to America seeking the dream, right? And Larry, Alex, as you know, born October 25th, 1913, and he died February 8th, 1977, which is ironically my father's birthday, February.
Oh wow.
So it's a coincidence, right? Now, most people would say, that's not important. That's not an important coincidence. But, Filipinos, we look at coincidence and think, oh my God, that is a big, that's like a message, right?
Right.
I mean, we look at coincidence and say, oh, God is telling us something. That is the message. But that's the kind of figure that Larry Itliong was. He came here. He arrived here. He was young. He was like 16 or something when he came here.
Yeah, 15. He would turn 16 that
Yeah.
same year. But yeah, I reflected on that a little bit this morning
Uh,
because I was kind of brushing up on my Larry Itliong stuff, and then I go at 15. I was looking to go play baseball in the park with my best friends, or riding my bike till
yeah.
all hours of the night till my mom goes, "Shh, Alex, you know, call me home for dinner."
Yeah.
At 15, he was trying to
15.
make a living. He was trying
Well,
to
he
make a
was.
living in a country 6,000 miles away.
Well, Alex, come on. Let's be a little skeptical. Do you think he was truthful about his age, or do you think, like many people who came here, there was some,
Yeah,
fudging about age? What do you
sure.
think? Because I know that this is critical because if you came in the 20s, and like my father, and he was already in his 20s when he just turned 20 when he got here. He wasn't able because of age to qualify for World War II. He was too old, and a lot
Oh.
of people who are younger or put down a younger age were able to take advantage of
Mhm.
certain things later. So have you ever heard about that, the people questioning how young Larry was when he first came to America?
Well, the standard I always thought was Carlos Bulasan.
Mm,
He came as a late teenager. I
yeah,
mean, I think that was the norm. I
yeah,
think the young men in the villages, they didn't see much hope in their villages. Bulasan was selling salt by the granule. I mean,
mm,
out of a bamboo stick. I mean, how hopeful is that for a young boy at that age, right?
yeah,
You're at that age of dreaming of things. I want to play baseball. I want to become a Superman. I want to do this. That's the age when you start imagining what might be. And I think that's the perfect age for them to say, you know what? I'm going to strike out on my own and see what's like. And you got to remember that the Philippines at that time, that was the mindset of the American educators, the governors of the territory of the Philippines was that America was paved in gold.
right.
I think I shared the story with you that as a 5-year-old, when my mom told me that, hey, we're going to America,
Yeah,
my I imagine America as dark sky with stars,
yeah,
which kind of was part of the flag.
Yeah.
And
Oh,
I don't
yeah.
know, it's a little bit. I just thought, oh, it's a land. It's where at night it's crystal clear and you see stars, millions of stars glittering at you. That was my perception of the United States. So
Yeah.
can you imagine a young boy like Larry coming out of Pangasinan thinking, gosh, Philip Veracruz shared that same sentiment in his biography that yeah, he
Yeah.
says, it was a better life. It was
See,
going to be
this is
paved
the
in
thing.
gold.
This is the thing. People talk about, where do we get this stereotype of streets are paved with gold, and the Filipinos live that. The Filipinos
Yeah.
live that, where, yeah, the streets are paved with gold. We are, by virtue of independence, or not independence, but by virtue of colonization, we are
Right.
American nationals. We have free not free, but we can pay our dollar steamship fee,
Mhm.
and we can come to America without green card, without and any kind of any kind of documents. We're American nationals, and they really did honestly believe that the streets were paved with
Mhm.
gold. The only thing we didn't have, we didn't have bootstraps to pull ourselves up from. I guess I, God,
With
we out
chinelas.
on the bootstraps, but all the other cliches hold. And so, all
Yeah.
right, so Larry comes here. He's a teen, just like Bullasan. You know, that's incredible. And then his life begins. He's educated, but he goes to the fields and he starts work as a migrant. Right?
Mhm. And
Ro-
and that's the story that Bulasan wrote about it. Manong Larry in his biography, they talked about he wanted to become a lawyer,
yeah,
but it didn't happen. And at that time, you needed a money, b connections, and c who knows what the admissions practices were back then. Um, Manon Phillip spent a quarter in Gonzaga University, but had to drop out.
yeah,
They had dreams of coming here, with nothing but being able to do what Americans said they could do, anything they wanted. But that was not the case.
yeah.
I
Well,
mean,
your
my
story.
own my own dad, my
Yeah,
own dad. I mean, my sister shared with me that my dad tried to, as soon as he got here, he didn't have his mindset of being a farm worker in Delano. He came here and hooked up with some Filipino men, the other Manongs, and he went out to try to get a civil service job
yeah,
because he was a civil servant in the Philippines. So he applied for post office, police. Well, it wasn't really police, but correctional officer, because that's what he did in the United States, in the Philippines. And my sister told me this. He said at the post office, the clerk said that he did well on the test, but he's going to be lower on the list because they were putting up the Americans,
ah,
the ones, the non-immigrant ones, they had a promise to commit to them, and it wasn't just based on test scores. They had he encountered his first, kind of a xenophobia, back there that, well, we don't know we're going to hire you because we got to hire the Americans first. So and that's why he settled and for the farm work, which a lot of people did. My friend was he was Roger's dad. My friend Roger, the guy was a brilliant guy. College graduate. My dad was a college graduate. He
yeah,
wound up working as in a grocery store. I mean, there was a lot of frustration by those men, Philip and Larry, Carlos. They were frustrated by this. The American dream was shattered. But
yeah,
but you know what? They said it's shattered for me, but it's not going to be for the people who follow me.
yeah.
And that's why they fought.
Yeah. We did our families did what they could, you
What they
know.
had to do,
Yeah.
right?
I mean, my father did not take the yellow cab off the boat to get to Stockton.
Mhm.
Instead, he stayed in San Francisco and worked the restaurants, right? Because the
Right.
restaurant, I'm not here to pick the vegetables. I'm going to cook the vegetables. That's what my dad said. And he cooked them, right? And he was one of those Filipino cooks, but could they get to be chefs? They were cooks. I
Yeah.
mean, there was that ceiling on where they could go. So they did what they could, and I imagine he didn't go to the fields because he had a condition. He had asthma, and so I'm sure that that curtailed, the outdoor life with all the,
Yeah.
the ag. So, so Larry, but Larry wasn't strictly ag. He worked in the fields. He also worked up in Alaska. What were some of the Alaska stories that Larry told you?
Well, the Alaska stores were consistent. My dad would be gone for 6 weeks. And they were the same kind of thing. They were just a bunch of men in a compound, and you can imagine young Filipino men. If they're not working, they're drinking, getting
Right.
drunk,
Yeah.
uh, causing havoc. And that's the way it was for them. And there was no lifting them out of that.
Yeah.
To this day, I know Filipinos who go to Alaska because the money's good, to go there. But I think in our your dad's and my dad's generation, mine and Larry's generation, it was the thing to do that you have to do. You have to survive it
Yeah.
because it was tough. It was like being with street gangs, or in a prison setting. If you didn't survive, you were going to be run over. And
Yeah.
so it was a tough thing. And all the stories that my dad told, all the stories that Larry told was about being tough. You have to put a tough front,
Yeah.
or you'd be taken advantage of.
Well, what did Larry say about when he was up in Alaska? What did he say about the loss of his fingers? Because his nickname was Seven Finger Larry.
Right?
And did he ever talk about that when you and Roger, got him in a reflective moment after his life? Because one of the things about your relationship with Larry, after he was a public figure and sort of as he was winding down into his third act,
Mm-hmm.
he befriended you and Roger and started talking. Did he say anything about the loss of his fingers?
You know what? I think from what I recall, he relished the mystery about it. Because in my family's dinner table, I could hear my mom and dad talking. Oh, I think he was in a gang fight, and they cut him off as retribution or something for something he did. And I think Larry did not tell the truth because he relished the persona that he gave him, as a
Huh.
tough guy.
Really? You think
Yeah,
he made up stories as he went along about how it
I
happened?
don't think he made up. I don't think he made up stories. He just kept quiet about them.
Ah, I
You
see.
see? And so that created more of an aura about, so what does he mean by not wanting to talk about it? So that created more of a mythic legend of Larry. And come to find out, in my readings later on, after Larry passed away, there's some historical accounts that he lost it in a railroad car accident.
Huh.
That he was trying to hop on a train, and the door slammed on his fingers. I'd never heard that before when I was hanging out with Larry. I think he really liked the mystery about it, and
Yeah.
I could see his personality. That's him.
Well,
I mean,
tell me about that personality because a lot of people may have encountered Larry Itliong for the first time in that Asian American documentary that
mhm,
PBS had, and they always sort of depicted Larry as a kind of a little rough around the edges, right? That was the idea that he was not. He was diamond in the rough, but he was smart. He was sharp. He was a tactician, and he was a great, passionate speaker. But he, you know, a little rough and tumble kind of guy. How would you describe the personality of Larry when you knew him as this bungalow kid who hung out
mhm.
with Larry when he was in his later years?
Well, two experiences I've had. Before I met him as a child in my first family's dining table, I could sense uh, the intimidation between my mom and dad about Larry. Oh, he talks really tough, and and so they respected, they feared him, and I think that was part of Larry's strength, was that that he talked tough, and he didn't separate himself from the crowd. You know what I mean? Some leaders like to perceive themselves as, oh, I'm I'm from a higher calling. I have special skills that you guys don't have. Larry's Larry's mode was like, I'm one of you guys. I worked in the fields. I girdled the grapevines. I hung out in Chinatown. I did young male things when I was an adult. And so he had the persona that I came from where you come from. He
Mm.
was no different. He didn't have the aura of being royalty. That he's compared to Jose Rizal.
Yeah. Yeah.
Jose Rizal was a Spaniard, came from royalty, and came from a higher calling, and so
So,
that's how he drew his followers. But Larry was different.
yeah. But with Larry, like you wouldn't see Larry in a Barong Tagalog necessarily, right?
Yeah, I'd see him in one on occasions, but then that was the mode.
Yeah.
But yeah, he was more the roll up his sleeves, denim guy.
Yeah.
Um, I think that's what's different between he and Philip and he and Cesar Chavez.
Yeah.
True fact, I don't mean to denigrate Cesar Chavez, but Cesar Chavez never worked in the fields.
Yeah. Oh,
He worked in agriculture as a youth, from my understanding, back in Arizona. But he came from Guadalupe, which is on the southern coast of California, between by Ventura County, and he came to organize workers. He never worked in the fields.
so
He
this is
came.
an important thing. This is an important thing because many people are only discovering Larry Itliong now
Yeah,
because Larry Itliong has been not propped up. He has been discovered by the Filipino American community, by scholars and historians, and said, hey, look, let's get the historical record straight. When you consider the 65 Delano grape strike, when you consider what happened in this massive worldwide, labor comes to the table with the civil rights community, and we have this mass movement. It was started not by Cesar Chavez, which is what people want to think, right? It
right.
was started by the Filipinos, led by Larry Itliong in 1965. And that, and so when you bring up the fact that Chavez never worked in the fields, that's an important thing that most people don't understand. Not, and once again, not to denigrate Chavez or take him down from his standing, but he stands where he is
Oh,
the
absolutely,
shoulders of Filipinos, on the
absolutely.
shoulders of Larry Itliong, Philip Veracruz, all the
Right.
Filipinos who began the strike in September of 65. And we've talked about that in our previous shows. But
Hmm.
Larry, I mean, that's why people know Larry. Chavez was like the organizer, but Larry actually worked in the fields.
Yeah, and here's the thing. I got to know Dr. Dawn Mabalon, the late Dr. Dawn Mabalon. Um, I met her in 2015. Um, she was the one urging my friend Roger and me that you know what, this year's the 50th anniversary of the grape strike. The UFW is going to hold a big event in late September. I really do think we should have a separate celebration. And I just got the charter for the Delano chapter in June, and 2.5 weeks, months later, we hosted a 3 day celebration that you were a part of.
I was
And
there.
so
That was a
I
great
know,
event. A great
uh,
event.
you know what, and Dr. And Don was just a seminal individual for Roger and me. We just knew Roger from we just knew Manu and Larry and the movement from within, but
Yeah.
she gave us the cast from an academic viewpoint that okay, here's what it looked like from the outside, and here's the meaning from within. We just thought that well, Larry's a great leader. He changed the whole makeup of Delano. He changed the makeup of Filipino Americans. My generation, we got to witness what Filipinos could do, and so we became these. My opinion. I don't want to hold this any sociological endeavor, but I think it brought us up from behind the meek little brother to, you know what? I stand on my own. I'm
Yeah.
Filipino, damn it, and whether you like it or not, I'm Filipino and I have a history.
Yeah. Well,
and you can't take them. So yeah,
he is that iconic figure that says, "Hey, what has Filipinos done? You know, the
yeah,
Filipinos led this movement. The Filipinos
yeah,
took people from the fields and
yeah.
brought them together with
Mhm.
the Mexicans were coming up, right? The Filipinos were
Right,
there first on the fields, and it wasn't until the the late 60s that more Mexican laborers were coming up
right,
and they were joining Chavez, and as they were joining Chavez, Chavez was organizing them, but they were not advocating a march or a strike in
no,
1965.
no,
And it was the Filipinos who were there already through the Agricultural Workers Organizing Committee, AFL-CIO, that said, "Hey, we want to strike."
hmm,
And that was the coalition of the labor movement and the
right,
civil rights movement. And that is where Larry can say he's up there in the pantheon of
right,
labor civil rights leaders. Larry Itliong belongs there. Chavez, to a degree, yes, because he came, he brought the Mexican workers into the strike, but Chavez overshadowed Itliong. And we're just all we're doing by talking about Itliong this weekend and on his birthday on October 25th, which is on Sunday as we speak tomorrow. We're just trying to say, hey, look, let's not forget
right,
his rightful place and what he did, and let's not forget him as a man. One thing, Alex, though, we talked about the toughness of Itliong. He was Your mother and father were intimidated by him.
yeah,
Chavez was this meek, peaceful guy. And I remember Don Mabalan's father, Ernie, who was a worker and who was out there on the fields. And he told me this line. He said, you know, Filipinos wanted to strike, but Chavez wanted to march, a peaceful march. He says, marching to Sacramento behind the statue of the Virgin Mary, that is not a strike. I will never forget what Ernie Mabalan said. There was a real conflict between
yes, there was,
and the Filipinos took on Larry's personality,
yeah,
right?
right. And uh, another figure in there was later on was Philip Veracruz.
Yeah.
Philip Veracruz, as soft-spoken, as scholarly as it sounds, he was a radical. I mean, he was a pump your fist, slam the desk kind of guy about workers' rights
Yeah.
and movement. He was just as he had a different personality.
Yeah.
Larry was tough as nails, but Philip uh, uh, kind of softened that side a bit, but not much, because Philip was just as aggressive as Larry about wanting to do things. And here's the thing that I was getting to a point, and I got misled by Dawn, but Dawn reminded us that um, Larry was AFL-CIO trained organizer since the 40s. In the 50s, Larry's been organizing, and Larry was a valued organizer for the AFL-CIO. This strike would not have been successful without Larry's presence because the AFL-CIO, and remember famously the UAW auto workers came to join in and helped out a lot. That's because they knew that Larry was trained and he was more than capable and willing.
Well, he was
Chavez was yeah.
yeah,
Go
well,
ahead.
he was Larry was seen as a union brother, and Chavez, you were
Oh
saying,
yeah.
was how did they view Chavez?
He was a community organizer. His National Fireworkers Association was a community service organization. They were going to help him with uh, uh, finding their way through the society, training them in how to do the certain thing, filling out forms. They were going to help the community out, but they were not labor oriented. They were not labor union oriented. Larry was the moving figure, and to his credit, um, I think this was common knowledge among the Filipinos that I remember as a child that Larry, there was a resentment that Larry Larry ceded his rightful position in the union when he stepped when he took the second, what is it, the vice presidency,
Mhm.
when he took that, because I'm gonna tell you, a lot of Filipinos were upset because he should have been there. He started the darn thing, but I think to Larry's credit, he knew that Chavez had the skills, he had the communication skills, he had had that Mahatma Gandhi, Martin Luther King, the
Right.
peaceful protest thing that would actually get them farther along than Larry and Phillips. Let's crush the uh, the powers that be. Uh,
Yeah, but Alex,
That wouldn't have sat well. Yeah.
yeah, but Alex, really, also there was this idea that by the time that Larry, who got his training in the 40s in
Hmm.
unionizing, he was a young man. By the
Yeah.
time it was the 60s, he was in his 60s. He was not
I think he
young.
did the math. He
He
was
was not
58 when he did the strike. He was
50,
58.
58, but most of the people who were his followers were not young men.
No,
And
they're even older.
they were older,
Yeah.
and the young guns or the young bloods were really the Mexican workers who were just coming in at that time. And
Right.
I think
Right.
that I think Larry had the tactical sense and the strategic vision just to say, well, they're going to be they're the future.
Right.
They're going to be the
Yeah.
workers. And
They
so
had the numbers too.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, so,
they had the numbers, and
yeah,
so he knew that if 1,200 Filipinos walked out on September 8th, 1,200 in a pool of maybe thousands more of farm workers would be lost, would be insignificant without the Mexican Americans, and so that the U in the union name really meant a lot. The United Farm Workers, the U meant a lot. It was famously said that the growers they weren't stupid either. If the Mexicans went on strike, they'd fill up with Mexican workers. If the Mexicans had gone on strike, they'd fill it with Filipino workers. And there were other ethnic groups. There were Arabic crews working out there. There were Puerto Ricans
right.
working out there. So they used that, keep them together in a camp. And there were Filipino camps and stuff. Well, there were only Filipino camps because the Mexican Americans they all lived in town or lived with relatives and stuff. So the camps were made for the Filipinos.
Yeah.
So while the other immigrant groups like Puerto Ricans and Arabs, they formed camps specifically for them.
Yeah.
So yeah, they used the different ethnic groups against us, and so the united front made sense, and it was going to be the road to success.
And
Um,
this is the
and
thing,
go ahead.
this is the thing that most people don't get. They don't get that the fact that Larry was able to bring them all together and
Yeah,
with his AFL-CIO training, make a strike work. That's that's what made the grape strike. That's what made the UFW. It wasn't necessarily Chavez. Chavez was on another level to sell the idea of the strike, maybe on this ethereal
hmm
MLK, RFK kind of thing.
hmm
We're a peaceful organization. But Larry was fighting. He was a fighter. He
yeah,
got things done. And I think most people don't appreciate how it came together and how that hybridization of
right,
Larry and Cesar, made this thing work. And you ask people today about the grape strike and the UFW, and they'll still say, "Oh, say that's Cesar Chavez's thing." Oh, they'll still say that. And if not for the efforts of people like Professor the late Don Mabalan, and other historians, other labor historians who saw the merger of the labor movement and the civil rights movement in that grape strike in 65. And think about the things that happened in 65. It was
hmm
this was a tumultuous time.
yeah.
You got
Watts
immigration.
riots.
Yeah, you got
Yeah,
the riots throughout the
yeah,
city or the cities of the nation, right?
yeah.
You've got and which are mainly seen as black and white, right? That's a black and
Mm-hmm.
white issue. You had the Immigration Act, which opened up the doors and
That's
ended
right.
the racist quotas against Asians, but
Right.
specifically Filipinos. Now,
Hmm.
thousands more were able to come in because of that 65 Immigration Act. And then you had the Voting Rights Act, which, once again,
Right.
seen as a black and white thing. That came up in 65. The grape strike was the merger of other peoples of color who were
That's right.
involved in this struggle, the labor struggle in the fields. It wasn't slavery, but if you're working for $1 a
Right.
day, it might as well be slavery, right?
Right. Right.
So when you talk about Jim Crow laws in the South, well, anti-intermarriage laws against Filipinos and all the discrimination that Filipinos felt in the 30s. Well, that was a form of Jim Crow. When you see signs
Oh
out in
yeah.
Stockton that say no Filipinos allowed, that was a form of Jim Crow. People didn't really understand all that, but historians like the late Don Mabalan were able to put this together and say, look, this merger of ag rights, labor rights, civil rights, and who's the leader of this? Larry Itliong,
Yeah.
Filipino American.
Right.
That's our history. That's our history, brother. And it's
Well,
right here.
it's been said before, and I'll repeat it again. Delano is our Filipino Selma, Alabama.
Yeah.
It was the tipping point to where we were not going to be invisible anymore. We were
Yeah.
not going to be just and that's how we felt being a farm worker family as a kid. Um, it was my I was in a grade school K through 8 where it was predominantly Filipino Mexican Americans. Very
Yeah.
few blacks. I can count in one hand the Caucasian kids. And so, but when we all the melting pot was high school, and when we got to high school, oh my God, um, I never felt so what do you call it, disenfranchised
Yeah.
as it was in high school.
Even in Delano, huh?
What's going
Even in
even in Delano,
ah,
even in Delano, we were. I mean, I looked up the demographics the other day. Uh, in Delano, we're still 15%.
yeah.
That's it.
Yeah.
And there's like 37,700 people now out of 60,000 that are Filipinos. So that's a good sum. But back then, we were still so marginalized. We were still like, you know,
Well, you think about that. You think when I was growing up, and like I said, we're just a few years apart. And I
hmm.
was growing up in San Francisco, and I went to Lowell High School,
Oh
and
yeah.
thinking, oh wow, I didn't really feel quite not necessarily accepted. I mean, it was strange. I mean,
Yes, it was strange. It
a
was
similar
strange.
thing there. We were in the throes of the civil rights era, but it was still seen as a black-white issue. And oh, you
Mhm.
Filipinos, where do you fit in? You know, in San Francisco, that's the way I felt. That it was all still civil rights was still black and white. Here's where I felt it. I went to Everett Junior High School in San Francisco, which drew from all the best black neighborhoods in the city: the Fillmore, the Western Addition, Hunters Point, Potrero Hill. They all came together. Oh, and here are these. There's this Filipino guy. Oh God! I mean, I had to learn all the James Brown records and the Four Tops and
Yep.
Temptations,
Yep.
and I thought I was for a while. I thought I was black. I thought the black culture was so dominant in that school, and the Filipino. Oh, we're gonna do the bamboo stick thing. No thing. I'm gonna go. So this is the thing for a lot of Filipinos,
Yeah.
that they
Yeah.
usually the black culture they embrace, the white culture they don't quite feel a part of, and so this is the time, right? The '60s, and
Well, here's the story, a personal story. Again, 1969, I guess 68. I was a freshman at Delano High School, right? And my best friend Herb Deludy,
oh yeah, Herb,
yeah, he's the husband of Judy Pataxil,
yeah,
and he was one and I was two in our class out of Delano High, out of Fremont Elementary School, and so we were there, and the first quarter of our freshman year, and we would be in this English class, in this math class, and then all of a sudden we had wood shop and metal shop,
Ah,
and
yeah,
all of a sudden the farmers' kids weren't in those classes,
yeah.
and we were going. We asked the farmers' kids. So what are you guys? What are your electives besides English and math? Oh, we're taking chemistry and biology. And
Oh,
go, and we
yeah,
looked at our schedule. We're taking wood shop and metal shop, right? And
yeah.
so we both march into our counselor's office and said, "Hey, what gives? We want those classes."
God,
And
Alex.
you know what? And
Yeah,
so this is 1968.
yeah.
So the counselor, who's Caucasian, congenial old guy, he goes, "Well, okay, but you guys, I remember that phrase.
Yeah.
You guys don't usually take these classes."
Yeah. Oh man, Alex, I relate to that story.
Yeah.
I because at every junior high school, that's where I'd find the black kids. In the wood shop and the metal shop. They say, "Hey, look here. This we call this a pig sticker. A pig sticker. Yeah, you did this. This is what you do against the cops. They would
Oh,
show me all these things. But I also had a foot in this other world where they said, okay, you can take the honors English class too, but I had to take middle shop.
yeah,
But they
right,
track people, right? They say
right,
they predetermine an education. You're going to be good. You're going to be bad. And you got
yeah,
to break the mold. You got to stand up like you did. And thank
yeah,
goodness for that. Now, what happened to people like Larry? They just ended up in the migrant system, right?
right. Because the doors were closed to them. I mean, he wanted to be a lawyer. Philip tried to go to college at Gonzaga.
Yeah.
Doors were closed. It just wasn't going to be their track, and
Yeah.
so they found a different track as great survivors. And I don't want to sound regional here, but my mom told me this, and my mom was half Ilocano, half Tagalog. My dad was Visayan, right? So
Wow.
I've got blood from every corner of the Philippines,
You're
but
mestizo. You're mestizo.
but they always characterized Ilocanos as they were innovators. They were bold. They would go out. They were the first ones to want to wander out of their villages.
Yeah.
I,
That's
I I would imagine the Lusones that arrived on the Spanish galleys in 1587. They were probably Ilocanos.
Yeah, oh
You know?
yeah. I think
Yeah.
if they're the Indios Luzones from the north, yeah, I
Yeah.
would say I'll claim them. I'll claim.
Yeah.
My father was from Lawag, from
Okay.
Ilocos Norte, way up there, right?
My
And
my grandfather was from Vintar,
oh, Bintar, yeah,
Surigao del Norte. Yeah.
yeah. So and Larry, we talked about this earlier, from Pangasinan,
Pangasinan.
close to
Close.
close to, close to
Close enough, let's say.
So, but look, I'm like you. I have some Tagalog blood too. My
Yeah.
mother's Tagalog, and my father was Ilocano. But this is the thing, Alex, because the Filipinos who are workers, they formed a family out there,
Yes.
and Larry was the leader. He brought them all together. That's one
Yeah.
of the things that you know that's not necessarily in the history books. We get the Chavez, Itliong, hybrid, or the
Mhm.
the conflict, or the what happened between them and the union. But for the workers, forget about Chavez. For the workers, Larry, they looked up to Larry. He was a leader. He brought everyone together, no matter where you're from, right?
Right. And again, it speaks to his communication skills. He knew 6 or 7 languages. He can speak to Ilocano. He can speak to Tagalog. He can speak to Visayan. And so that's gold as far as a union
Yeah.
organizer in the great field. If he can speak all the different dialects, oh my God. Filipinos are, well, this is human nature. It's not just Filipino, but if you speak their language, there's already a common thread. They've already opened the door and accepted you in if you can speak the language, right?
Yeah. Right. Right.
your po- your politics may be polar opposites, but you're in because you're Filipino. you know.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. Well, just like
I remember,
during
yeah,
the Marcos days, right? During the Marcos days.
yes. Oh
I
my gosh.
well, the politics didn't matter, but if you're Ilocano, oh, okay.
Oh,
No need to talk politics. You're Ilocano.
yeah,
Okay, I got to pass there. Okay,
yeah, right. And
right,
so
but
you
it,
know that,
yeah,
yeah, you know, and Delano was that way. It was very it, it was very diverse,
yeah,
even within the Filipino ranks. And you know, the some of the powers that be families in Delano at the time, they were from Aklan, Calibo. You know, I don't know what region that is. Is that northern Visayas? I don't know what it is.
I don't know, but you're gonna have. I have to consult
Yeah,
a map of
but
7,200 islands.
but the first city council member elected in 1972 was from that region, and he made Calibo the sister city of Delano. And there's even a park in Delano named Calibo Park. And you know, so it was diverse even within the Filipino section. There was my mom and my godmother. There were true blood Tagalogs, and boy,
Uh-huh.
were we bred to be Tagalogs. They were very, as you can imagine, they're very arrogant about their station in the Philippines. We're where the seat of power is. We're Tagalogs, right? And then my mom would laugh at my dad because he could barely speak Tagalog.
Yeah,
They'd laugh at him when he would misspeak in Tagalog.
Ali, I had the same kind of experience. My father's Ilocano, my mother's Tagalog, so
Right?
all they knew was bad English. So they'd say, "Oh, Emil, come here," and so I hear that accent all the time. I'm not trying to be racist or anything. I'm just saying
No, no.
this is the music that I heard. You know,
Right.
I heard my mom say, "Oh," or she say, "Oh, matigas." See, I know I don't speak the language, but I know the words, so
Yeah.
I must know
Yeah, yeah,
just like
yeah,
the
yeah.
7,200
Same
islands.
here.
I know 7,200 words like matigas ng ulo, or kain na tayo. I know little words. I know phrases, right? But
I
anyway.
remember. I was as an adult. I tried to look up Sus Mariosep, and
Oh
I was
yeah.
looking up under. I was looking up under the S's.
I
I
mean,
had no clue.
that is the thing. Like I didn't know. Oh, that's a phonetic Susmar Josep.
Yes,
That's not
I
like
was.
that's not a for real Susmar Josep. Uh,
Yeah, it wasn't in the S's. I had to learn this Jesus Maria and Joseph. Oh, you know.
yeah, it all comes together if you understand the
Yeah,
Catholic Church.
yeah,
It's all
yeah,
the
yeah,
Catholic Church. So
yeah.
look, Alex, fascinating to talk about this, but really your inside knowledge and people. I did an interview with Alex a couple months ago,
Yeah,
uh,
September.
so in September. Oh God,
Hmm.
that was only just yeah. All right,
Yeah, a
so
month and a half ago.
like 6 8 weeks ago, not too long ago, but you'll find it on our FANHS Museum live archive. All the tapes are there, and Alex talks about um, his mother and father in the fields and on strike day. But I mean, that really was probably when you first heard about Larry, right?
Hmm.
Strike.
Well, no, I heard it before that because my dad went to those meetings.
Mm. Oh yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
and the meetings. What did your dad say about Larry?
Well, that he was forceful.
I mean,
He
but
was again.
was it like a blind faith, blind loyalty to Larry? If Larry said we're going to strike, we're going to strike.
Again, my dad he had a nuclear we had a nuclear family. We were not like the Manongs in the camps. The Manongs in the camps were more willing to do so because they had less to lose.
Right.
My dad had to think about two young kids going to school. We were renting a house. We were making car payments. Of course, he was going. I don't know, but Larry is sure making a good argument. Uh, Imagine $1.40 an hour, what that could mean to us. We were sliding by on $1.15.
Yeah. Yeah.
Imagine what $1.40 would
Well,
would
that's
mean.
the thing.
So
Most
yeah,
people don't understand that the strike was to go from $1.15 to $1.40. Oh my
yeah,
goodness. I mean that of course you'd strike, right? Well,
Nobody gets that kind of raise anymore, you know.
yeah, yeah,
And we knew that Larry had done it in Coachella.
yeah,
So there was a recent example of how this could happen. We didn't think it'd come to a strike because in Coachella, the growers were a lot smaller. They had smaller farms, had more. They were more easily coaxed into agreeing to it. But in Delano, the farmers were a lot bigger. They had more options, if you will, and so it had to come to a strike.
yeah.
And so, that to me that was Larry's, I guess, superpower.
But
That he was able to talk to my dad, who had a family. He was able to talk to the Manong who was in the camps. He was able to talk to the mestizo who had a Mexican wife or a Caucasian wife, and convince them that this is the thing to do. And he was able eventually to talk to the Mexican American workers with Cesar Chavez to join in. So there's a superpower, the coming together for a united cause. Again, I want to repeat myself, but the united portion of it is just huge.
and there is this idea that there was trust in Larry Itliong.
There's trust. We'll
People
trust him for
believed in
this long.
yeah, people believed in Larry Itliong.
When you think about, the gentleman that made uh, the motion to go on strike, the Filipino Community Hall, he was my um, he was the dad of my godbrother, because my mom and dad were his godparents. I can't
Armington.
remember those things. Yeah, Armington, right. If Bob Armington stood up and voted to go to strike, that meant a lot to my mom and dad, because Uncle Bob was a powerful man. He ran a camp for a grower. He was a trusted man. He lived in the camp. He had a house in Delano as well, a big house, very impressive. This guy had a lot to lose, more than my mom and dad had to lose, more than the Manus had to lose. He had station. He had a position in the community, in his career, that he gave up a lot more. He had more chips on the table than anybody else. So if he went, and you know what, that was more power to it. Again, Larry convinced Uncle Bob to do so. That's tremendous.
Yeah.
It speaks a lot to Larry, but it also speaks a lot to Uncle Bob.
And
He saw the greater good, the end game. He didn't just see the loss of his livelihood. He saw the end game. It mattered for his people. And Uncle Bob, in the community outside of the farm worker, he was like a godfather. People went to him if there was trouble,
yeah,
and he
and
would go and fix it.
when the vote came up, it was really a
Uh-huh.
unanimous vote, right? By
Yeah,
acclamation.
and after a meeting where nobody wanted to do anything, there was not
Right.
even a motion.
Yeah. So they
So
so and here's the key thing about the strike. They called the strike vote in the Union Hall in Delano, and then it wasn't until at least what 10 days that Chavez came to his senses and said we got to strike too.
8 days.
Eight
September
days.
8th was September 16th.
Yeah.
Yeah, eight
So
days.
it was about a little more than a week. Then Chavez
Yeah,
joins, but the Filipinos were first, and
right.
the reluctant Latinos, Mexican workers led by Chavez came to their senses, joined the strike, and that's the record that we are out there to try to kind of not, yeah, we're not trying to denigrate one side or over the other. We're just trying to
No,
like correct the record and make sure you understand how it happened, the grape strike of 1965, and how the Filipinos, because of Larry Itliong, led this whole thing. Now, Alex, one of the reasons why I wanted you here is because after Larry left, he had so many, he wanted to share, he wasn't done. There was still juice in there.
yes.
He was still go, and you got to meet him when you were, as we said earlier, you were one of
Yeah,
the Bungalow Boys. You and your
yeah.
friend Roger. What? Tell me how you guys met. How did Larry discover you and take you under his wing and say, "I'm good"? And he loves cigars, right? We
Yeah,
you
yeah.
didn't mention that.
Well, you know what? Roger and I were kind of an odd sort. We were kind of odd ducks in the sense that that uh, we had a what do you call it? We had a little common bond about our community. We were we wanted to make it livable. We wanted to make sure that Filipinos were recognized and acknowledged. And I think that's what Larry saw in us. We were pangolos. We would drink and smoke and hang out at card halls. But he thought he thought he saw something in us that was not your typical Pangolo boy persona. And I think he recognized that because in those sessions, and I can't recall how he ran into us or met us. He just knew us as just these guys who just kind of stood out a little bit because he think he saw something in us, so he invited us over.
Yeah.
So we go over and stuff. I remember Roger. I was too young at that point. Some of those early days, I was too young, so Roger got to buy the beer, and then
Yeah.
we'd hang out at Mom and Larry's place, and we just chat. But you know what? Um, he was after he resigned from the UFW in '71. He went out and started uh, the Northern Kern Southern Tulare Senior Citizens Service Center, and he leased an office in the front of the Filipino Community Hall, and he would help senior citizens fill out Social Security paperwork, insurance paperwork, death benefits, getting ready. He continued to help, and a reminder too that while he was in the Union, he and Philip uh, uh, broached the subject of Agbayani Village. In fact, his son Johnny Itliong found this layout of what they imagined Agbayani Village would look like. So you got to remember that they were doing things for their community outside of the Union. Um, so Agbayani Village, he helped instigate that light of fire under the Union to do so, and it became a cause célèbre. I mean, college students, every weekend they come over and hammer nails, put up walls, and so I think it's a great testimony to Martin Phillip and Martin Larry.
And the whole idea of Agbayani Village is it was like a, not necessarily a rest home, but a place for seniors, senior housing after the fields, a place for them to go. It still
Right.
exists today,
Yeah.
and it really remains a kind of testament to, the community organizing work of Larry and the early UFW
Right.
still there. So, all right, look, you mentioned you got together with Larry for beers, you and Roger. What kind of beer was he drinking?
I don't remember. I think it was an American beer guy. I was kind of the snob. I preferred Mexican beer,
Uh,
like Dos Equis,
yeah.
Corona. But I think he was a straight up American beer. I don't know if it's Bud or Miller or whatever, but he was a straight up American beer guy.
Now, how about his cigars? Because we talked about
Oh God,
this is where Larry and I might have parted ways because I'm not a big smoker guy.
no,
But
so was I.
what kind of cigars did he smoke?
They're big, ugly things. I remember the bands around them, and it would start about this long, but uh, he would really be in his best when he was shorter, and he's got his two fingers out there hanging on to it. And
Yeah.
God, it stunk to high heaven. I remember there were a lot of manongs that our families integrated with, and did social things. And there'd always be Toscani, Roy Tans,
Roy Tans.
or
Yeah.
White Owls. Remember White Owls?
Oh, yes, I
Oh
remember
God,
White.
yeah, yeah.
So
And
now,
so they're
now
go ahead,
hold up a thing like he would hold a cigar. I don't know.
like this. It'd be like two fingers
Uh,
on here. So I've got a little arthritis myself. So he'd hold it up like this and just cackle, and he'll always talk between puffs. He'd always have the cigar in his hand.
do the puffs. Do the puffs of the cackle. What did the cackle sound like?
Yeah, I can't begin to do that.
No,
But it
come on,
was it was.
Alex, I had you on here because
I know he would like ha 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 like that, and
oh, wait,
but
wait,
he's
Alex, hold on, Alex. You got to get
yeah.
it in the right key. We have to get
Oh
the right
no,
key.
I can't. You're
We're,
embarrassing me. I'm gonna fail at this.
no, no, no. We're going deep into the Alex Edillor memory bank because we got to get the right key. What is it? I'm all right. Now I'll do the physical stuff. You just have to concentrate on the sound. Okay. So I'm gonna. Oh.
Ah, see, you know, I remember this. He would always say, "See, Roger, Alex, this is what you got to do." Da, 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 da. And you know, and out of those evening sessions, right? He got Roger and me. He got our feet wet in politics. He had Filipino Voters League that he brought down from Stockton, you know, and we were his hands and arms. And in 74 through the help of Filipino Voters League, there was this underdog guy named Steve Soggy, Sogge. He got himself elected as a I think congressman or supervisor or assemblyman. I can't even remember. But he came to Delano to us and asked for the Filipino Voters League's endorsement of him, and we put out a mailer, you know, endorsing him and stuff. And so even after Manong Larry passed away, you know, Roger, myself, and another gentleman named Max Becerra, we would call each other and say, "Hey, what do you think? Should we put out a flyer?" "Yeah, we'll put out a flyer." And there would be our imprint, Filipino Voters League, you know, endorses these people. And we were a powerhouse. And, you know, Larry gave us his address list.
Uh,
He
oh,
gave us
so
his
you
address list of the, yeah. So there was a mailing list. And so the powers that be, they came to us and said, um, we don't have we don't have the addresses you have. What would it take? Well, it says, well, you know, you come to our events, you promise good things, and you open the door to your offices, no problem. You know, so that's what Larry taught us, taught Roger and me is, you know, savor that mailing list because that's what they're after.
so
They're
he
after that
was
mailing list.
so he was a community organizer to the last day. He was like teaching young people
Yeah,
like you.
yeah.
When you were with him, did you get this sense of how big hearted he was? I mean, he was
Oh
smoking.
yeah,
What
yeah.
kind of stories would he tell you?
Okay, here's one story. Uh, Number one, he had a big heart because he took a bunch of Pangolo brothers under his wing. You know, he had foresight, right? Wisdom, discernment. But then there was a story told to me by, I don't know if I mentioned this to you now, I've said it several times, but where Larry lived, he shared a backyard with another family, the Ortiz family. Danny Ortiz is a very successful architect here in Bakersfield. Um, and there were two boys in the family, he and his brother Benny, and they worked in the field. But his dad was a businessman. He owned property and stuff. And Danny told me the story. He said that the early part of the strike, you know, one time Larry was working in his garden in the backyard, and he saw Danny's dad. He was Benny Senior, Mom Benny, and he goes, "Oh, Mom Benny," you know, and they talked a bit, and he said that Danny remembers uh, that his dad told him, you know, uh, Larry, you know, I respect your and understand why you're going on strike, but you have to understand why I can't because you know he has businesses and it's going to suffer. He's got these boys, you know, they're going to work in the fields because that's their livelihood during the summers. And so he told them, you know, uh, and he was comfortable enough with Larry to tell him, you know, that hey, I understand your cause, but I can't go. And Larry, without batting an eyelash, told him, I understand, Padre. I understand. And let him be. That's how graceful Larry was underneath this persona of like, I'm going to cut your throat if you don't join us, because that you know, frankly, there was a lot of um, language like that coming out of the bullhorns, you know, out in the fields, because
Yeah.
you had to do that. But one on one, you know, Larry was understanding. He knew that it's not going to be for everybody. And you know what? He was okay with us. He knew my mom and dad went back to work like several weeks later. He knew but he knew that it was a movement that was nuanced. There was not going to be unified. It was not going to be. this nirvana that we'd hoped it would be. And you know, history proved itself out. He was disenchanted with the Union. He left in '71. Martin Phillip stayed on until that debacle with Marcos, and Chavez. And
Right.
so, and then I don't know if I shared this with you, but I had the first person encounter with a brand new hiring hall that the union put in place,
Right.
after the contracts were signed, and it was brutal. I mean, I could see Cesar Chavez's brother, Richard, telling my dad that the farm that he was working for 15 years, he was no longer he no longer had seniority because he migrated. He went to work in Coachella, he went to work in Salinas and
Wow.
Stockton, so he lost his seniority.
So that was
I
one of the
mean,
harsh realities of the
yeah,
politics, the inner politics of the UFW. And
yeah,
I guess it made your dad fairly bitter about the strike, or how do you feel?
yeah. It got to be to the point where I think in '73 when the Teamsters came into town to wrestle some contracts away from UFW, uh, my dad worked at some farms that were Teamster contracted,
Yeah.
and
So
it was a harsh reality. I mean, the legacy of Martin Phillip and Martin Larry, you know, there were a lot of Filipinos who walked away from that because of the way they treated Filipinos.
even
And that
after, even
and
afterwards, huh?
Philip told me this in the '90s in his later life. He said, Alex, I stayed on to preserve our place in that union, but when he accepted an invitation by Marcos, that was the last straw. He could no longer put up that persona of trying to be good union man, looking out for the Filipinos. But he knew that the Filipinos were lost
Well, wait,
in that
you're
in that
talking
union.
you're talking about Chavez's invitation.
Yeah, Chavez's
Right.
invitation in '77 or '78. I guess he accepted an invitation to go to the Philippines under Marcos sent the invitation out, and um, I don't know what it was, but Marcos decided to give him an award or something and invited Chavez to go over there. And Philip was very adamant about it. He told me, I know in certain terms that you don't go there because he's a dictator. You're gonna uh, you're gonna he's looking for acknowledgement of his dictatorship. That if Cesar Chavez was willing to go, and accept an invitation for him, then it's gonna make Marcos look good
Yeah.
in the rest of the world. So there was a lot of it wasn't a kumbaya story in the end. There was a lot of factions going on. It was unfortunate, but you can't ever forget that seminal moment when we were united. That first year in the hall, being the strike headquarters and union headquarters, there's a lot of great stories there. Uh, I'm not telling the story; the Mexican Americans were telling the stories. There was a video I saw of the Mexican Americans saying that Friday nights was cultural night for them. They would all get together Friday nights at the hall, and they would sing Filipino songs and sing Mexican songs. And
Right.
Luis Valdez, right?
Yeah. 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 The
Yeah,
playwright.
he
Playwright.
yeah he started El Campesino, the Teatro Campesino in Delano on that stage at Filipino, and he would put on little skits
Yeah.
on that stage. And so it's kind of wonderful to see that coming out. That first year or two, it was such a united front. I mean, on Fridays there, I was told too that there would be truckloads of donations of clothing and stuff, and they would kind of throw it out in the middle of the floor of the Filipino hall, and the families would go out there and kind of collect clothes for their children. And so it was united. And the first weeks of the strike, three Filipino manangs were manning the kitchen at the Filipino Hall, making breakfast, lunch, and dinner for the strikers.
Yeah.
And it was just a wonderful moment. And being in that hall, I want to put a shout out here, but there's been a call for the Filipino Community Hall to be preserved and to be recognized for its role in history,
Yeah.
Philippine American history. And in the next several years, you're going to see some great movement in making that happen. And so I hope you would join us in that
Oh yeah.
cause. I know FANHS is going to be there. You know, I'm
Yeah.
there. We just have to get over, you know, the
Yeah.
little resentments, you know, that always exist.
Look, Alex, that event that you held on the 50th anniversary of the grape
Yeah.
strain, it was really quite an event. I got to meet all
Oh,
the players. They were all
yeah.
there. I was able to interview all of them, and it was just great to be in that hall and to think
Oh
that
my
that
God.
was where they took the vote. That's where Larry went, and it was exciting. I remember driving down there with my buddy Dylan Delvo, right, Little Manila,
Oh
up
my
here
God. Yeah.
in Stockton. We took the drive from Stockton down to Delano, and it was really it was a great event, and I would hope that we can have something like that soon, maybe
Oh
when
yeah.
we preserve the hall. So
We've been exchanging emails with various sources, including the National Park Service.
yeah,
They're all gung ho. I know that um, Mark Polito down south has got a
yeah,
group of people ready to go, and I'm just getting this local congressman here. He's running for re-election. He's half Filipino, T.J. Cox
TJ
from
Cox, yeah,
our
no,
yeah.
TJ Cox, I know of him.
Yeah, his mom is Filipino, and so he's wanting to put together a preservation, historic preservation meeting here on next Friday.
Oh,
So
that's great. That's great. So we're gonna thanks for that tip.
yeah,
You know, this is how information is passed on. Alex, just a few more things on Larry. Those
sure.
moments. How do you think Larry would look at how active would the Filipino Voters League under Larry and you two pungalos, you and Roger?
Oh, dude,
How active would you
yeah,
be in this election if
it'd
Larry
be
was alive?
it'd be huge because you look at you look at the landscape of local politics, local institutions and stuff, and it's strewn with Filipino Americans. I mean, we have school board members, special tax district members. We've
Right.
got Rob Bonta up north. You know, we've got T.J. Cox in Congress. You know what? We're that sleeping giant. You know, and I think the Filipino Voters League is going to be right up there, poking that giant. You know, with a stick, saying, you know what? We can make this happen.
Yeah.
We can make this happen.
Are you is Larry's legacy of the Filipino Voters League with you and Roger?
Oh,
Is it still
we talk
active?
about that.
Is it still
it's
active?
it's 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 latent, and I think we need a fellow Pangolo from San Francisco with a double L in his last name,
Ah,
maybe
well, I will.
to become that third cog.
We'll talk about that because it's an interesting thing to happen, an informational thing, not
Sure.
necessarily making endorsements, but well, that's something to discuss. But yeah, I'm glad to
Yeah.
hear that. In the remaining time we have, Alex, and
Okay.
really, once again, I am very thankful for Alex Edillor to give us his time to be with us here on this FANHS Museum pop-up. But what is your go-to Larry story? You've been talking to people all
Yeah.
throughout, uh,
Mhm.
you know, History Month, and you talk about Larry. What is your go-to Larry story that
You
you
know,
tell people that you know?
it really was. It's not a personal anecdote because again, we talked about grassroots things when we talked with Larry, right? The Filipino Voters League, his stories of the canneries and the longshoremen in Seattle. So they were those are the stories that he would tell us. But I think what stands out among with me now is how how he turned his broken dreams of the American dream, how he glued that back together and formed his own American Filipino American dream. I think that's the lasting legacy, lasting moment for me is that Larry did that. He took the shards of broken earth and clay and put it together again and said, hey, this is our new dream and that we could do things in today's workplace. You know, I've been talking with the Filipino workers uh, uh, group down in LA. We were going to be in a group session together tomorrow, but that got to be pushed back. And so, uh, so I think Larry's legacy is going to be about what we do beyond, what we do for the Filipinos in labor, what we do for Filipinos culturally, what we do for Filipinos in in governing, being a part of this the institutions that frankly turned its back on Philip and Larry, my dad, your dad. You
Yeah.
know, we're turning those institutions into open doors
Yeah.
to Filipinos afterwards. So really, that's what we have to do. That's our utang na loob. You know, that's what we owe to them, to our to our dads. That we're gonna we're gonna open the door even wider. You know, it's gonna be
Are
that gold. It's gonna be that Golden Gate Bridge. And they'll remember my impression as a little kid. It's gonna
yeah.
be that Golden Gate where Filipinos can flood through those under those gates and know that they have a future here in the United States.
See, and that's the importance, Alex, of telling the story. It's a value of Gail Romasanta's book with
Yes.
Han about Larry Itliong's story. The more people who know this will know that, hey, we were here, we did this thing, we have iconic figures, we've got
Right.
Larry Itliong here, uh, and we just have to tell. That's the mission of the Filipino American National Historical Society, the museum. And I am just so thankful that people like you have have these stories about the real Larry Itliong that you can
Yeah.
share, because we're not hearing enough of them, right?
No.
Finally gotten it out, but we need to hear more about the kind of guy, despite the cigars, the kind of guy Larry Itliong was, and how he remains relevant and important to this current generation, right?
Hmm.
As we
Right.
move forward. It's the way we make history,
Sure.
how we bring history to the present. And really, Alex, I thank you. We have people live on our FANHS Museum, the Filipino American National Historical Society Museum page. That's at FANHS Museum on
Hmm.
Facebook. Julian Simeon, a great supporter and donor, says great stuff. Elsky Casabar says this is good stuff. Thank you for sharing from back then. Appreciate even more. Natalie Cole laughed at some of our jokes. That's good. Uh, if you
Hey,
have,
we could be a comedy duo,
yeah,
Emil and Alex, like Penn and Teller. Or
yeah, yeah, we'll have to make ourselves disappear in a few minutes. but Alex, really, seriously, and to the audience members, if you have, I'm going to keep Alex on here for a few
sure.
seconds longer. If you have any questions, put it in the chat box. I figured out a way to maneuver between the chat box and our Zoom meeting. Alex, I want to tell you something. I've talked to a lot of historians about Larry, and they say, oh, he's the icon. But what's funny is that you don't hear much about the women of this period.
Oh
You,
my God. Yeah.
you don't hear, and yet the women, they were strong. They were there. They weren't as numerous because for the most part, they were brought in. The Filipino men
Hmm.
were brought in to be the workforce, but
Hmm.
there were Filipina stories. And I don't know. Have you heard of this woman, Celine Navarro? The Celine Navarro story? You know about
No,
that?
I have not.
Celine Navarro came here in 1918 to San Francisco, then went to Stockton. She got married. She was part of the community. 1932, she witnessed something. She was a member of, she saw something, a crime, and she broke the silence of the community. And because of that, she was murdered. She was buried alive in
Oh,
1932.
Jesus.
Does that ring any bells yet? She was buried in the Delta.
No.
Okay, well, see, this is a story, Celine Navarro's story, as told by filmmaker Celine Paranis Shimizu. The FANHS Museum is holding a webinar event next Saturday at 1 o'clock.
Oh, wow.
We will put a link that you can register for the event. And I want to invite everyone to come and hear the filmmaker and members of the Navarro family, her granddaughters, talk about this. Dorothy Cordoba.
Oh,
Dorothy
wow.
Cordoba will be online, and I'll be moderating it. So I invite you, Alex.
Okay.
The link will be there. And it's the idea that we talk about Monong Larry now as a, as this iconic figure. He's, you know, the men. We hear about the men in the fields. What about the women? What
Yeah.
about the women? And the Celine story begins to establish an heroic Filipina from the 30s that is worth mentioning. So I know.
Wow.
Do you
Yeah.
recall it?
Well, yeah. I don't know if I told you the story, but I tell the story to all the tourists, students I come across about my mom.
Tell me what about your mom?
Oh man, I'm gonna start crying, so I'm kind of girding myself up for this.
Oh, wait,
Okay,
wait. You're gonna start, Alex.
here,
Give
okay,
me. I promise you will come back because
okay.
I don't want to give your mom short shrift, and
No,
I don't want to make you cry unnecessarily.
no.
But I do want to make you cry at a later date. But
Okay, we'll save it. It's a people tell me it's a wonderful story. It it's what happened, and it's a good little story.
Alex, promise you will be back in a few weeks. We will devote more time just to your mom because I think it's important to talk about the
Oh,
women. And, when,
yes,
you know, I know that I keep talking about my dad, my dad, my dad, my dad. What about my mom? And my mom has stories to tell. She didn't come into the picture until the 50s, but she was there, and the women had their own things. And
let's
I
do this.
yeah.
I have a photo taken in the 1950s, and they're all Filipinas with their children. They are. Uh, I don't know. I don't know who took the picture. I don't know how. I got it from somebody I knew, but if she doesn't know where she got it from, it's a picture of Filipino women. They were all war brides
Oh yeah.
of the Delano Manos that came over, and they're all the little children um, from Delano. I posted it in our group, and a bunch of my peers. I go, "Oh my God, that's me, and that's Tony over there, and that's Barbara over there," and they're all recognizing each other's little kids
Yeah.
posing. And you know what? The war brides, the women were the glue in
Yeah.
any community. And let's do that. Let's reserve a day
All right.
for the women. I've got stories about well, I have the later days and UFW days is Agtang,
All
Lorraine
right.
Agtang.
All right. Let's do
So
this
we'll
around
say that.
let's do this around Veterans Day.
Sure,
All right,
whatever.
we're gonna talk instead of everyone talks about the veterans on Veterans Day. It's their day,
Yeah,
but on that weekend we'll talk about the war brides because they played a part.
yeah,
They played
yeah.
they played a role, and so all right. So
Okay,
hit me up with an email. We'll talk about that.
book it.
All right, Alex, and spread the word about the story of Celine. We're gonna
Okay,
do that
okay,
on Halloween, October 31st at 1 p.m. Pacific. The link will
okay.
be available on wherever you're seeing this. There will be a link. You can register. It's free.
Right.
It's not the movie. We're not going to show you the movie. There'll be a link to how you can watch the movie, but we will talk about the Celine story. It's a kind
Mhm.
of a ghost story, history story, her story, and it's an important one. That's coming
Okay.
up October 31st at 1. So Alex, hey, once again, thank you very much for just you know being you, telling the stories about Seven Finger Larry as we honor him. And Larry, he could sing happy birthday in 7 languages, right?
Right.
So,
Hey.
so yeah, and his birthday is tomorrow,
Yeah.
October 25th. I thought we'd get the jump. So this is his birthday eve.
Mhm.
celebration. But I thank you for coming on the FANHS Museum pop-up. Uh, we'll come back and talk about your mom. Around Veterans Day, we'll be in touch there.
Okay.
But Alex, anything I left out you want to say? Emil, you left out this story about this what I did with Larry or whatever. Anything you're burning to say before we say goodbye?
So, what kind of pork do you use when you make a pinakbet? Do you
Yeah,
like do you
no,
like
no,
do you use pork belly or shoulder or what?
no. I use the vegan pork. Vegan pork. I no. I love peanut bed. Because I'm vegetarian. I'm vegan, but
I
there's a
know.
there's a place called Nick's on Grand. We're not related fiduciarily or anything. I think they were open, but they had a vegan lechon that I've had once or twice. It was great. I haven't been there since the pandemic, but Alex, you can you
My
can be if you're a vegan Filipino, no more statins, no more high blood pressure pills, no more,
right?
no more diabetes, no diabetes,
No, it's the
no,
gout. It's the
no
gout
gout,
thing.
no gout. Oh yeah, I got relatives with the gout thing, but no gout thing if you're a vegan Filipino.
I
So
know.
so
So
I'm
more power to you, man.
we're gonna have to talk about nutrition on one of these gatherings.
Yeah.
How 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 do how do Filipinos how do they transition and become how do they become
Vegan.
vegans? Yeah. So Alex, really?
Ilocanos have 1 foot. Yeah, Ilocanos have 1 foot in that door because
Oh,
all the
I
gulay.
it's
Whew.
bad. It's bad. I look and I pray for all the Ilocanos to become vegan with me. Come on, join the
Yeah.
vegan Ilocano train. You can email if you want to email me, Filipino American National Museum at gmail.com. That's if just, or if you want to do a shorter way, Filipino Museum at gmail.com. That gets you directly to me.
All right.
Alex, as always, thank you very much. Once again, to our audience members out there, my name is Emil Guillermo. I'm the museum director of the Filipino American National Historical Society Museum. Thank you very much for joining us. Join us again tomorrow. We can do this tomorrow, Saturday and Sunday, 11:45 to whenever. We'll be here. These pop-ups. Thank you again for joining us. Have yourselves a great day, and as they
Yep.
say, we will see you subsequent.